Yes, welcome to everybody who likes to join the first European Green Infrastructure Day, organized by the European chapter of our network. What we are the network of a number of associations worldwide related to green roofs, green infrastructure, and a combination from researchers, experts, and industry players to bring forward a more green world and greener cities. Our point was to starting with some conferences from Toronto the first time up to a number further ones, and you see on down on this picture the 2012 event with more than 1,600 participants in China. This was of course the biggest one, and now we are happy to have this online format, which was started by our European chapter, which is established in 2020, and we try to do similar things for Latin America and the Asian world, organized, for example, by Himakuma from India. Some publication was come at that time. Julian Blaz will be on the one of these calls this afternoon, and he is most responsible for this publication. The multiple benefits of urban green infrastructure, we try to bring together a lot of knowledge, which started on the level of architecture, Mr. Le Corbusier with the flat roofs and some greenery on top, some innovative roofers who find that green roofs could be a protection against fire, and of course the roof gardens, fantastic situation for have more open urban space in cities. On the other side, my topic, for example, is the ecology, and see that biodiversity will be enhanced by green roofs. And finally, you can find, as a case study of Berlin, about one quarter of all related plants to the city on some roofs without the cityscapes. Urban water retention and the niche of pollinators will be a topic today as well. And of course, the important point for investors, is it costly? Is it more expensive to doing some greenery? We will have here some information by Stephen Peck in this meeting today. And the green infrastructure politics of the EU is nicely connected to a number of these things, and it's great to have today this opening. And our knowledge base, I can only bring here one example, just say we are looking for climate and weather. And on our university in Neubrandenburg, for example, from 1999 to 2018, about 20 years, and you can see a line. The blue line is the urban heat island effect, which coming also in our smaller city in Europe. And on the red line is the effect within this greenery, and you can see evapotranspiration and the higher amount of vegetation makes that these temperature will be stable over the time, and this is real a nice evidence about effects we can have. And this is a type of extensive green roof, better situation if you have water, blue-green infrastructure, other more engineered roofs for the future. So a lot is to do for the future. And what is to do in the future? It's nice to have today a number of sessions, only 1 hour for each hot topic, but it brings together a number of ideas how we can deal with vegetation and bring some technical green infrastructure effects. It will be start with a general overview. I will thank Mr. Blaz Kurnik to give an overview of a nice current report just now published. Then we have sessions, blue and green over gray, and the urban biodiversity will be a topic. Turning a building into a carbon sink is an interesting point. Financing of the green infrastructure will be the next session. And after the break, what is up in Europe, seeing some nice examples in Europe, and green infrastructure and climate adaptation and mitigation, what we had as a topic here, will be connected with the evapotranspiration effects of urban water water cycle. And then the human-centered aspects of healthy and sustainable cities, and very important point to use the roofscapes as an extra space for urban livable cities. And then come a number of conclusions. We will thank Mr. Virginius for the closing words. Yeah, that will be finally the program for today. And I hope you can enjoy this day. And I will hand over my microphone to Mr. Blaz Kurnik to start with his presentation of the new study. Thank you for your attention and have a nice and successful day today. Thank you for the organizers, and let's hear what Blaz Kurnik has to say. Yeah, I thank you for this.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Koehler. I will also share my presentation just to start with it. Just give me a second. Okay, I hope you can see my presentation. Yeah. Good. Good morning to everyone, and thank you for this nice introduction. I will talk today about the green infrastructure and focus on climate change adaptation. In particular, how green infrastructure and natural-based solutions can help us to adapt to climate change and also to become resilient as a society in Europe. As already mentioned, my name is Blaz Kurnik. I'm head of adaptation and LULUCF at the European Environment Agency. So just a little bit of the context, and I hope you can see this video, which shows about how the temperature has been increasing in the last 40 or so years globally. And you can see in the last 2 decades how the animation becoming red and how the temperature is actually increasing, and particularly in the parts of the northern hemisphere, also in Europe. And you can see that most of the globe is becoming red. This means that the temperature in the recent years, it's higher than average temperature in the last 30 years or so. When we are looking in the future, we can also see that of this, based on the projections, this temperature increase will only continue. Of course, depending on the scenario, if we are looking into the low emission scenario or high emission scenario, both scenarios show increases in the temperature in all seasons, winter, summer, also average over the whole year. As you can see, the temperature is then varying at the end of the century from between like 2 degrees to around 6 or even more degrees in some part of Europe, and in the seasons. In particular, in the winter, we see increase in the northern Europe, northeastern Europe, and in the summers, increases in the southern Europe. And of course, these increases in temperature will lead having more extreme heat waves, which will affect our lives, the society, and the economy. And that's another example which I would like to show you. Here is basically on the left side, you can see there is the projected heat waves at the end of the century, a number of days when we are actually above specific threshold. And you can see that in the southern Europe, the regions in the southern Europe increases in heat waves duration are like above 40 days more than what we are experiencing now. So it means that we will have a temperature or heat waves much longer and much more intense. And on the right side in the figure, you can see the current situation about green areas in the cities. So basically how much parks we have, how much of the trees we have, also let's say gardens and so on. And this you can see just opposite picture in Europe. You can see that the cities in the southern Europe, which have been or will be most affected by the heat waves, have the lowest share of the green spaces. And the cities more in the northern and central Europe are having, let's say, higher share of the green spaces than in the south. And this is also giving us some, let's say, conclusions that we also need to think. We need to rethink how we should rebuild the cities when we start investing into this kind of changes. And that's, I give you one example, which is basically very, very important, but also very recent, in particular when we are looking into the pandemic situation. Now we can see there's an example of one city, Prague in this case, and showing where the hospitals are located. And you can see when we are looking across the Europe, we can see that more than half of the hospitals in Europe are located in the strongest urban heat islands. So basically, when the temperature is more than 2 degrees higher than in the surrounding area. Moreover, 30% of the schools in urban area are located also in this particular zone. So, and we need, of course, to have more solutions, in particular when we are looking into the green and blue spaces to decrease effects of this kind of heat waves. Not only the temperature, I want to show you also example on the water side. Here is the projections of the extreme extreme rain situation in Europe by the end of the century, based on the high emission scenario. And of course, you know that the heavy rain leads to the flash floods in particular. But on the other hand, the lack of rain, lack of water leads to the water scarcity and drought. And here you can see that, of course, at the end of the century, the number of events with a heavy rain will increase in most part of the Europe, in particular in winter. And of course, in the summer, there will be some decreases, which can lead, together with the decreases in annual average rain or precipitation, amounts to the drought and water scarcity, which is also affecting the quality of life and in the cities in particular. And when we are looking into the green infrastructure and natural-based solutions, we have to say that, of course, there are already some examples which are based on the nature. And in particular, when we are looking into the water extremes, we need to make the cities to become so-called sponges. So that means when we have too much water, we need to have infrastructure which is basically decreasing flooding events. And when we have not enough water, then of course this infrastructure needs to serve as a sponge, which can then actually slowly release the water for the needs for the vegetation. And in cities, there are some examples here, like usage of the water drainage system, green roofs, which can serve as a sponge, but also some of the, let's say, parks being transformed into the way that basically they can actually decrease the impacts of extreme precipitation events in this case. And in our report, we were looking about how to use the infrastructure and what the cities are doing with the respects to the adaptation. And here it's an overview when we actually went through the city plans on the adaptation, what kind of type of adaptation actions are the most frequent planned in the cities in Europe. And you can see that, of course, we split them into the structure, specifically into some groups, like social, institutional, and structural type of measures. And when we are looking into the green infrastructure or nature-based solutions, the tree planting and creation of green spaces is one of the top approaches in adaptation actions in the cities in Europe. It's not the highest one. For example, those flood mapping and climate change, incorporating climate change into the planning documents are highest. But this is basically the first structural adaptation measures which comes out when we were reviewing the cities. Of course, there are other examples, maybe more down, like green roofs and walls are also appearing quite frequent and also becoming more and more important structural adaptation measures, in particular in the cities. Oops. So this leads me to almost my last slides, which I would like to make some conclusions, some statements here. And I think what is important is to start making the right investment in terms of effort, but also in terms of money. And one of the examples is, of course, nature-based solution and green infrastructure, because in particular, it is a long-term solution with greater returns than when we are looking in some of the gray infrastructure, for example. I must say also, there is quite a lot, and you could see it in the previous slide, quite a lot developments on planning, but less on the implementation. So what I would like to say, it's additional effort is needed, and this comes to the let's say quite down to the regional or city level. Additional effort is needed to start implementation of, for example, nature-based solution and green infrastructure in the city. This is still not the case, and you could have seen in one of my previous slides about the level of green areas in the cities, particularly in the Southern Europe. Additional investment in the new transformative solutions, because only this new transformative solution would be actually a long-term, being a long-term solution, and like said in the previous, the first point, with having a greater returns. What is also important is stronger coordination at all governance level, coming from the EU sides, national, regional, and also city level. Important also to mainstream nature-based solution adaptation approaches into all policies, like into water, biodiversity, energy, human health. That's also an important, basically mainstreaming adaptation in. And last but not least, good practice to be shared. And that's something which is also important when we are having meetings like today, that we are exchanging good practices, that the cities implementers can actually start using this example and also talk to those who are maybe a little bit ahead. And this is my last slide. I would just like to promote our two recent reports. One is looking into the urban adaptation in Europe, how city and towns can respond to climate change. Some of the slides previously shown as coming from this report. And another one looking specifically in nature-based solution, which basically looks into the policy knowledge and practice for climate change. And also I used some of the example in my presentation from this report. And this is my last slide. I would like to thank you for your attention. And in case you have any question, I will be happy to answer. Thanks again.